Welcome, everybody, to Impact and Influence. Today, I have Ida Azefor on, and she is a financial coach and an accountant from Montreal, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So, to all of us Canadians out there, it's nice to be able to chat with a Canadian. And today on Movement Makers, which is a group that both Ida and I are part of, our challenge this month is to talk about adventure. And so earlier today, Ida was talking about hiring, and adventures are sometimes not just around where we go and what things we do, but in relation to the people. And in business, one of the adventures that I hear about often these days is about the challenges of hiring the right people, making sure that we've got the right people on our team so that we can move forward as a business owner, as a manager. And so today, Ida and I are going to dive a little deep into this. I asked her if she'd be open to this topic, and she said yes. So, welcome, Ida. It's lovely to have you.
Thank you for having me, Nancy. It is truly a month of adventure because, well, 2023 new year, but also the
Mhm.
topic adventure, and this is an adventure.
Yeah, sometimes the hiring process, right, and selecting the right members of our team can be an adventure. So I'm curious to know, what is your current experience in hiring for your business, your accounting practice?
So I've had a challenge right there because I'm for the longest while I've done this alone. I've
Mhm.
been a solo person, so when I get the information, I know what needs to be done. I do it,
Yeah.
but I'm at the place where I'm trying to scale.
Hmm.
And so the best way to do that, of course, is to get other people, train them so they could do what takes a lot more of your time so you can focus on the higher level stuff and have other people do the other things.
Right.
So finding people, it's not so easy.
Yeah. Especially in this day and age, right at the moment. Hmm.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing for me is finding the person who can do the work, not necessarily the way that I would do it,
Hmm.
but a person who can do the work that doesn't add my work, meaning
Right.
do it right or ask
Hmm.
questions so we can figure it out and so
Yeah.
you do it right.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So one of the things when you go to hire, what is the practice? How in the past have you gone to try and find people or promote that you have this opportunity?
So because it's not a full-time position,
Hmm.
it's more of trying to find the people who already have jobs
Yes.
but want to learn to eventually maybe also start their own, maybe a little bookkeeping thing by the side or something like that. So
Ah,
I'm trying to find people who have that vested interest in wanting to learn because they could go ahead and use this for themselves.
right. Right.
So it's
Perfect.
usually
That's beautiful.
right. So it's usually like because most people want to be like, okay, I want you to come and work for me forever. But no, I want you to come and work with me and I could train you. And even if you move on to go and do your own thing, I know that if I have some work, I have those people that I know how they work already and I could pass things along to them.
Mhm.
So it's a challenge about trying to find the person who is flexible enough to want to do this on a part-time basis,
Right.
income wise, because if somebody has to depend on this for their full-time income, then that becomes a challenge because
Right.
you have to take them on as a full-time employee.
Yes.
That's not what I'm looking for, and that's not the vision that I have for it. I want to build a
Got you.
team such that there are people who are able to do things on their own, but they are also
Hmm.
part of my team, and I know that I could always pass on those things to them
Right.
to do. Because, like, for example, in tax season, there's so much more to do.
Right.
And after that, it's like, okay, I just want to do my own thing, right? So it's
Hmm.
finding that person who is willing to learn so that they can go and implement for themselves
Hmm.
and is also available to do the thing that you need. Well, you could pass it on to them and say, no, I'm not available. Or you could be like, yes, I'm
Right.
available. But you taking on certain additional work depends on you having the people who are going to do it. And so
Hmm.
it's been more like word of mouth. I haven't put out any ads out there. It's been more like word
Okay.
of mouth, like, okay, this is what I'm looking for. And if it seems like a fit, it's like, okay, let me train you and let's see how it goes. And then if I
Right.
give it to you and it doesn't work, it's like, okay, it's like that kind of
It's
thing.
frustrating, right? It's like, ah, so one of the things that I promote the concept is spend more time in the looking phase so that you can spend less time in kind of going, oh, this isn't a fit. So when you have put it out there in a word of mouth, how have you described what it is that you're looking for?
Interesting. Because the thing is, the most people who I reach out to word of mouth, they know what I do. So
Mm,
I haven't had to
okay,
describe a lot of what I'm looking
right,
for because it's like, okay, you're looking for someone to be a part of your team. Oh, we know what you do. Okay, maybe go talk to this person. So
right.
I think I have to be more intentional about describing what
Mhm.
I'm looking for.
And so one of the things that we can often get mixed up in hiring people is we understand the skill set we want, but what you're looking for is somebody who fits not just the skill set, but has that drive, that desire to long term be their own entrepreneur, right? Who has their own potential bookkeeping business, who can work flexibly with you, right? And so, one of the things that I find a lot of companies do, even big corporations do, is they're really good at saying, these are the skills that I need you to have, right? I need you to be able to understand how to do taxes or these accounting principles. But what they miss is like, I need a person who's got this value, this drive, this desire. And so, one of the things that I would love to do here is talk through kind of what are those values? What is that desire? So that when you talk to people about, I'm looking for someone, they can be like, oh, this is not just the person with the skill, but this is the person who's a good fit for your organization. How does that sound?
It makes sense. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if you stand back and look at this person and think about it, what are some of the values that you have in you that you would like to be able to have in another person who's going to come work with you?
Problem solving.
Problem solving.
Problem
Okay.
solving. And
Yes.
I don't know if that is a soft skill or a hard skill. I don't even know what to call those anymore. But it's
Yes.
knowing that, okay, Nancy has work that needs to be done,
Hmm.
or Ida has work that needs to be done. And I don't know how to do it, for example, but I
Hmm.
know there is a solution. So
Yes.
let's find that solution.
Hmm.
That's how I work. And so
Yes.
if I come across a challenge, I don't just
Mhm.
throw my whatever in and say, okay, it's done. Like I can't solve this. Go help
Right.
me with stuff. I would try to figure it out. And I wouldn't
Hmm.
spend like a lot of time trying to figure it out myself. Like
Right.
be resourceful.
Hmm.
Being
Yes.
resourceful is very important when it comes to problem solving. So you might not
Right.
know the solution, but you know that there is a place you could go to find that solution. So I
Hmm.
think that is like the top skill, the top, not a skill, but the top personality trait that I would be looking for. Your ability to
Okay.
problem solve and your ability to be resourceful.
So now that you know that, as you sit down and have a conversation with this person, what are one or two questions you could ask them to help you identify, do they have this resourceful problem solving skill?
I could throw in like a real situation, like say, for example, a client calls and they have this problem and you don't know how to solve it. What are you going to do?
Hmm. Yes.
And
Yes.
now it's listening to see, okay, not necessarily what they say,
Hmm.
but a combination of how they say it, body language and stuff. Because it's not right or wrong answer. It's just you want to see that this person has that
Right.
personality trait to want to do
Yes.
this thing. And even though they don't know, it's not like, oh, I don't know, you solve it for me. It's more like, I don't know, let's find a solution.
Hmm. Exactly. Right. So when you're hiring people or when you're going to interview, what we want to do is think about what are some of the traits. And then how can I, in the conversation, test to see, do they have these traits that fit and connect with me? So problem solving, right, is one of those traits. What is another trait that's really important for you?
So being comfortable with learning new things,
Mm, okay,
because particularly in accounting, the laws are changing all the time.
right.
But not only are the laws changing, technology around it is changing.
Hmm.
So right now, a lot of people are starting to use cloud computing, cloud accounting as well.
Right.
Before you would have, for example, QuickBooks as a very common software. We're more focused on the desktop version. But right
Hmm.
now, it's the online version.
Hmm.
It does, at the end of the day, it does the same thing, but in a
Yeah.
different way.
Yeah.
And so if you are stuck in your ways of, no, I only use this particular software and this is the way it's done, but not realizing that there is a new software and there is a different way it is done to get the same results,
Hmm.
then you are not open to change. And that change is going to continue happening because things are evolving a lot, especially with the cloud computing software right now. Unlike the desktop software where you could choose when you want to say there's an update, do you want to update it? And then everybody knows that there's a new update and there's going to be a training to say, okay, this new update has happened. With the
Right.
cloud software, you could log off tonight, you log back in tomorrow, and an update has already been pushed into the system and it changes the interface that you have there. It's
Hmm.
doing the same thing, but the whole interface has changed. If you are stuck in the way of, oh, we used to look like this and it doesn't look like this anymore, oh, I can't solve that problem, or you start carrying your hand in the head, it makes it more difficult for me to even be able to work with you because I don't even see you trying to figure out, hey, something looks different. Okay, how do we do this thing now? Let's
Right.
be in our problem solving state. Let's be resourceful. Let's let's do it. Okay, it's new. Yes,
Yes.
let's do it. Let's do it. Right. That kind of thing. So for me,
Yeah.
that's how I am. And that is the
Yeah.
kind of characteristic that I try to find in people. I know
Hmm.
I could teach you how to do what needs to be done, but
Right.
I need to see that not only are you teachable, but you're
Hmm.
also pushful to be, you don't get easily frustrated by things not going your way.
Yeah. So, what's a question that you can ask around that topic?
Can you, let's see. I don't know.
So, a question could be, like, especially if it's around a software update, right? Is how do you take on new challenges? What inspires you to learn something new and try something new? And even be like, when you're learning something new and you get stuck or frustrated, how do you react? Right. So, one of the things that we're looking to do is like dive deep into what is their behavior? What is their motivation? Are they able to show up and give you those answers?
Hmm. Yeah, makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's really important that we take a bit of time and sit back when we're looking at a job description, we're looking at hiring somebody and not just think about their hard skills from an accounting perspective, right? But these behavioral approaches, these habits and skills that we have about how do you deal with something?
Yeah.
Does it take you a long time? Are you expecting does somebody to show you how to do it? Or, and so we want to be able to ask a really simple question that will have the person ponder for a few minutes and provide you an example of what it is. And what I would ask for is like a clear example.
Mhm.
So often I would say things, can you tell me a time where you had to learn a new process or tool? And what did you do and how did you achieve it?
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
and have them share that experience with you, have them share that time with you, right? Tell me a time where you were stuck with a problem and you needed to come up with a solution. What was it? Right. So we want to get into really clear questions around the behaviors that we're looking for when we hire.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm.
It makes a lot of sense. And while I was in corporate, I'm actually still in the corporate world, but while I
Well,
was
yeah.
there,
Mm-hmm.
that was, yeah, when I had the opportunity to interview people, like that was a common question that we would throw out there. Like, okay, tell us a
Mm-hmm.
time when you had a difficult client
Yeah.
show up to work, and well, a difficult client show up to you and say whatever, like you just throw that kind of scenario out there and you get some really, really interesting answers to that. But it's not always about what they say, but it's like, okay, what's their reaction? What's their
Exactly.
body language? And it tells you a lot
Right.
about them. I remember interviewing somebody a couple of years back, and
Mm-hmm.
she used to work at a place which is snow skating, a skating rink.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
like a skating rink. And she had some situations there where people came and they were like yelling at her and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the way she explained it, the way she handled the situation is like, wow, we ended up hiring her just from the way she explained the story of what happened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
And
how did
also it's
she
like,
turn out as an employee?
she's great.
She's
She's
great.
still she's still working at the company. She's great.
Exactly, right? And so that is what we want to do. And I think especially as entrepreneurs, there's certain skills, right, that we can learn in the corporate world that we
Yeah.
don't necessarily remember to take with us. And so what I want to do is encourage you to think about what are some of the questions or things that helped us decide who was a great fit for our team and our organization, and getting into some of those behavioral type questions, some of those ways of interacting and going, how is it, um, is really helpful. Is there any other kind of learning or thought when you think about some of the corporate interviewing that you did that may be able to help you in this role?
I'm thinking, you tell me if that's helpful, but I'm
Mhm.
thinking of a situation where there was somebody we ended up not hiring.
Okay.
But if I were the one making the decision,
Mhm.
I would have probably hired that person for the same
Okay.
thing that the other team member said we shouldn't hire the person because of that.
Yes.
And it was more like, okay, this person was more straightforward about a lot of things,
Hmm.
asking about things like, so the straightforwardness is what was impressive to me. It's like, wow, this
Right.
is nice. But the other person took it like, oh, they're too much. They wouldn't be able to take
Hmm.
instructions and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
how is that? How does that then become? Is that something you would say, yes, this is a good trade, or this is not a good trade, or it depends? And
Mm.
how would that? What would your advice be around making the decision in that kind of scenario?
Right. So, one of the models I work with people on is known as the process communication model. And what we recognize in PCM is that there are 6 different personality types. One is our base language style that we communicate with, and
Mhm.
one, it may be the same or it may be different, is the one that drives our motivation. And so, what will happen is if you and the other person in that interview had 2 different base styles of communication, so you enjoyed that directive communication, say the other person was more an emotional communicator and preferred softer, gentler tones, right? They
Mhm.
can find that as a clash. And so it's not necessarily whether the person is a good or bad fit for that role. They may be a good fit for you to work with, but not necessarily the other person to work with without becoming aware of the communication patterns. And so when you hire, because you're a solopreneur and you're looking for people to be on your team, ideally, you want people to match closer to your personality type and structure. When you're doing it in a big corporation, we end up with all of the 6 different personality types. And what we find is that people who have similar perceptions of communication work better together than those who our perception is lower energy for.
Mm,
And so their communication style is not the problem, it's how the two interact is the
mm.
challenge. Mhm. So as a solopreneur, you now have the freedom to be like, you know what, I like that personality type. That works really well with me. And so this is a good fit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Interesting how you put it, because we ended up not hiring that person because of that, right? Because the person was going to
Yeah,
have to work with different people on the team. And it's like, okay, some people didn't like the straightforwardness, and some people were like, yes, we like it. It's like, okay, we can't work
great.
with that person because it wouldn't be a great fit for the role, because this role cuts across lots of departments. And so,
Exactly. Right. And so it's really important to recognize that people may have all of the skills and the talent, but if they're not a good fit within the team,
yeah.
then you start to end up with miscommunication. You may end up with behavioral problems and complaints and those types of things. So if I look back on my career, I used to wonder why it was so easy for me to work with men versus women. And what I discovered through the process communication model was I am more a direct and logical communicator. And that works well generally in male teams, right? Where often teams with a high female population have more of a nurturative communication, which is very hard for me to do. I learned to do it by
Mm-hmm.
managing my stress. I need to ensure that those things are done. And then I can soften and I can change the body language and adapt to that personality type. But I do better in male environments. And I do better because my communication style is more naturally adaptable in the male environment.
So, a question to that though, then. So,
Mm-hmm.
if a person has to not be themselves in order to
Right.
fit in an environment, do you
Mm.
think that is healthy for them? Or do you think they're going to last in that role?
So I think it will be a challenge. If the person can't authentically be themselves, then it will be really exhausting and be a challenge for them. And when somebody can't meet their psychological needs in a role, then what happens is our negative distress behaviors will start to show up because we're trying to use those to get the positive need. And so it becomes more challenging. And so it's a matter of if you happen to be in a role where people are different, it's really understanding what do I need to do in my day to meet my psychological needs so that I can show up and adapt to the other people around me. But if you struggle with that, then it will be like, it'll just be a battle day in and day out. And it's not about you as a person, it's just that it's not a good fit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So then what advice would you have for me for, oh, I'm the
Yeah.
one interviewing you now.
No, ask. It's all good.
But what advice then would you have for me for looking for someone to get onto my team as I'm trying to build my team?
So the first thing that I would do is I would take some time and reflect on what is the personality type and person that I want from the behavior. So we talked about the problem solving skills, right? We
Mm-hmm.
talked about somebody who's willing to adapt and learn to new tools, new behaviors, and good with change that is coming in. I would sit down and I would write what are those top five values or key role things, behaviors that I want in that person and make those your primary conversation when you go to talk to people and promote the job out there. Because what will happen is when you clearly identify what those expectations are, you'll start to attract those people in.
Mm-hmm.
And those people will then be happier working with you because they're aligned with those values. They're aligned with that behavior, that expectation
Yeah.
around the work. And that's when we'll start to see less turnover, less, oh, I've made a bad hire, right? It's because we need to get really clear on what those principles are, what those values are that are important to how you run your business as the entrepreneur.
All right. I got my homework.
There you go.
Problem solving, adapting to change. Yeah, I have 2 or 3 here. I'm gonna make the list 5, and then
Yeah.
just come to think of it, I haven't even had this conversation with them. It was more like, okay, this is what I need. This is what, in terms of the skills, the hard skills, it wasn't really about the soft skills. It was more like the hard skills. This is the software we use. This is what the clients need. This is that. Is this something you want to do? You're going to be able to do? Yes. And then it's like, okay, let's give it a try.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it doesn't work. So, can you give me an example without saying names or stuff? What is an example of something that you have seen somebody do that frustrates you?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I assigned work to someone,
Mm-hmm.
accounting work, of course, for a client that needs to be done.
Right.
And typically, because it's not a new set of books. And
Okay.
so the easy thing to do if you don't know what to do is look within the system and see what has been done in the past.
Right.
And so this person looked in the books. Okay, so I give 2 people the work to do.
Mm-hmm.
So the first person did it wrong and made some mistakes.
Okay.
The second person, in doing the books, looked to the work of the first person
Mm,
and replicated the mistakes of the first person
got you.
instead of looking along, say, 2021, looking at
Right.
2021 or looking at a longer horizon. They looked
Right.
at the work that this other person had done and then replicated it. And in my head, it's like, okay, like I own the fact that I didn't go in to review
Right.
the first person's work early enough for the second person to have a clear set of books to look at.
Right.
So I own that, because if I
Yeah.
had given them the training together and said, okay, this is how we do it and stuff, then those things would not have happened. But at the same time, my problem solving mind is saying, as an accountant / bookkeeper,
Right.
you should know if this entry is wrong.
Right. You should
It's
be able to
not,
identify it.
yes, it's not a software problem.
Yeah.
It's an accounting problem.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a software problem, ask me, Ida, how do we do this in this software? But if
Right.
I don't get that question, my presumption is that you know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Fair.
so the most frustrating thing I have seen is having those mistakes made on top of mistakes and nobody coming to ask a question and nobody having the second thought to say, hey, this doesn't make sense.
Right.
In the books, it doesn't make sense because accounting wise, this doesn't make sense. So that's like the most frustrating thing. And so, yeah, it's that.
So, okay. So let's talk about the conversation then that you had with them. And we're going to dive a little bit into the language and the communication pattern to see if we can identify what their distress pattern is that is preventing them from happening. So with the first person who made mistakes, when you approach them, what was the conversation like?
I don't think I approached them. It was a time crunch, and so I fixed it.
Oh, okay. So you fixed it.
I fixed it. Time crunch.
Okay. So it's just easier to do it myself.
Yes.
Right? So
because the good thing is I'll go in and I'll review everything. Because I would normally have done it myself, but now because somebody else did it, I'm like, okay, this is the first time they're doing it. Let me review everything. And so in reviewing, I saw the mistakes and I was like, okay. And because of the time constraint, because they also do have work, like a job, and the hours that we're going to have to work together is kind of limited. It's like, okay, I'll just do it. And then, yeah, so I did it. Yeah, go ahead. The second person?
Yes.
So with the second person, then, I did have the conversation with, because the second person, I wanted to continue doing the stuff that was being done. I said, no, you have to hold off because there were a lot of mistakes in doing it. And I do understand that you might have not recognized that there were mistakes because I told you to look at what was done before and use that. And that's what you did. So I recognize that you might have just looked at what was done and used it. But at the same time, you needed to have known that these things were wrong, because I'm assuming that you have the accounting knowledge to know that this thing is wrong.
Right.
And so, yes, so the conversation was around the information that you put in. I recognize you copied this other one, but that one was already wrong. And so both of it is wrong. And so we have to fix it. And they're like, okay, so we need to do some training. And I said, yes, we need to do it. But right now, I don't have the time to do it now.
Right. Right.
Yes. So that's the extent of that conversation.
So I'm curious, when you think about that person,
the second or the first?
Let's do the second person first, because you had that conversation. We'll go back to the first person. So when you talk to this person, what kind of words did they use in response to you saying it? What was their initial reaction?
This person is it's extremely introverted.
Okay.
And so they were more silent, and then they acknowledged that they should have recognized that there was a problem.
Got you.
And then they said, okay, I'll wait for when you have the time, and then you can teach me how to do this.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about somebody who is more introverted. In the PCM model, we would often describe them as being somebody who has imaginary baser phase, depending on where it is in their profile. But what this means is that these people need time to process. So they often require you give them a piece of information. They often won't respond back, but need time to process, and then can think about it and come back. And when we communicate to them, we often want to communicate in more direct language as opposed to questioning language. So it would be things like starting with a verb and say, reflect on this and come back to me in 2 days with one idea on how to resolve this. Right? Or so we want to direct the thinking part of their brain and give them a bit of space and time. Could be like a day before, it could be that type of thing. So one thing that you may be able to do with this employee is maybe they do or don't need training, but see if they can identify the mistakes. I'm going to give you a challenge. I want you to see if you can identify the mistakes and come back to me in 2 days with what you see. Right? So sometimes we don't need to train them. We just need them to communicate back. When I have had people who have this style of communication, the other thing that I have found is they need to be more directed. So I will say, complete this work. Let me know when it's done. So it requires a bit more of that type of management style with them to be able to direct and get feedback to say, it's done, please check my work, that type of thing. Because because you've heard the word, I'll wait, right? So they'll just sit there and passively wait until you respond back. That's actually their sign of distress as well, is they'll passively wait. So that's just so that's an example, right, of how you communicate with somebody who has that personality type. Now let's go back to the first person, because I have a feeling they have a different personality type.
And there was another one. Speaking of, there was another one who was on the same task. And so another person was on the same task, and then the tried, because they're coming from a completely different field and they're trying to get into accounting and bookkeeping. And I said,
Okay.
okay, you seem to have the personality of a person who wants to learn this. So I'm going to
Right.
teach you.
Hmm.
I need you to go. And I gave them a set of tutorials to go and look at and study the thing
Right.
and then come back to me. And
Yeah.
so when they came back and said they were ready, I assigned them some work to now do
Hmm.
based on the tutorials that they have done. And so they started doing the work. They got to a point and they just stopped working altogether. And,
Mm.
and so I followed. I was like, okay, where are you on this? Tell me where you're struggling so I can help you with this.
Right.
And they went incognito for a while. They went incognito for a while and then finally came back to say, oh, I was dealing with something personal. Now I'm back. Can you tell me what to
Mm.
do? I'm like, I don't have the time for this.
Time. Right. Right. So when you think of that person, what was their language pattern? When you were like, hey, this person seems interested, what was it about them in the way they communicated that helped you?
They were willing to get the training at whatever time was convenient for me.
Okay.
Because I was like, I'm super busy right now. I can't do this. The
Hmm.
only time I'm available is, I think it was like 8 a.m. my time, which was
Yeah.
probably gonna be like 6 a.m. their time.
Right.
And they're like, yes, 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 I'll do it. So they were coming from that completely different field. Of course, they
Hmm.
wanted to make some money.
Right.
And they saw that because I was giving a talk somewhere and then they met me there and they're like, okay, I like
Mm.
what you do and stuff, and I want to work with you. I'm like, okay, I could train you. I don't
Yeah.
have the time to quote unquote babysit. I didn't use that word,
Right.
but that was
Yeah.
the thing. As a so if you want to get on and do this with me, you have to get up to speed. I'm gonna give you the tutorials that you can go and
Hmm.
learn. I'm gonna send you YouTube videos that I have checked and I see that this is what they're teaching. It's stuff I teach, but I don't have
Right.
the time to do it. So go watch these basics, get
Yeah.
into the software and take this training that they do. And then when
Hmm.
you're ready, when you've done all of that, tell me and I'll give you some basic work to do. So
Right.
they did that. I didn't check it, but they said they did it. And so I was like,
Right.
okay, now this is the work now for you to do. Start
Hmm.
doing it. If you run into an issue, tell me and I'll help you
Yeah.
with that. And then
Yeah.
they're like
They
in,
just
out, and then incognito. Like, yeah,
incognito.
yeah.
Yeah, and so without kind of getting a little bit more into their personality type, right? Is it a couple of them could be what we call promoters. So they're people who need to get into action really quickly. I think those of us in Movement Maker have a bunch of promoter in us, which is why we like start to do things.
Yeah.
But sometimes if they don't have constant action, right, can can lead to manipulating a situation or kind of being like, oh, I was off here and coming up with excuses like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's another personality type that we talk about that has like a rebel personality type, which is all about fun and spontaneity in the moment. And so these people, when you communicate with them, come across with high energy. They come across really excited. And so that's why it's really important in your interviewing process is to get into some of these behavior questions, right? About what is it that you're looking for?
Mm-hmm.
Because you want to see, are they people who like are like, oh, that's the shiny penny. I'm gonna go after that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or are they people who are like, okay, what I feel from your personality type is what we would call thinker, which is similar to mine. And that is like, okay, there's logic, there's a responsible way of doing it. I'm going to work really hard, right? When I
Yeah.
heard you say, you know what, it's just easier for me to do it myself,
Yeah.
that's like something that people say, right? And it's like, so so we want to look for people who have more of that personality type within us, who will
Mm-hmm.
like drive to the bottom line, who will solve that problem and work on it.
Yeah.
And so it's a matter of kind of paying attention to these personality types. And the last one that I want to chat about and just kind of propose to you, and it could be with the first person, is what we call harmonizer personality type. So the harmonizer in their base communication, somebody with harmonizer base will speak through feelings and emotions. You'll hear them say, I feel, I appreciate. The words are softer. If
Mm-hmm.
it's in their phase, they're looking for recognition of person, not effort. And so, not about the work, but about them as a person. And so, recently I was working with somebody who had an employee who was in harmonizer phase. And one of the things we see is a stressed out person in harmonizer phase can start to make simple mistakes, like easy identifiable mistakes unconsciously, because they are looking for recognition of person. And so one of the things that I coached that person through was actually showing more appreciation in saying things like, oh, I love having you on this team. Let's connect for a cup of tea, right? Those type of,
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you as a person. So it's not around their work or the quality of their work. It's really about them as a person. And as soon as this business owner started to do that, they actually started to see this person transform and stop making silly
Mistakes.
mistakes and silly perspectives, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so one of the things is when we can be aware of what others need from an appreciation standpoint, we can actually start to offer it to them if it's something easy and natural for us to offer, right? And so this can sometimes transform somebody who is an employee into moving from somebody who's making mistakes into doing a successful job. So I'm curious, did that first person have like an emotional, was there an emotional connection?
Mm. Between me and this person?
Well, no, just in that person. Did he or she seem like they needed like emotional support?
I I can't tell.
Yeah.
I
Mm.
can't tell, no. But yeah, no, if
Did
I
they
say this
make,
piece now, it's gonna be easy to identify the person. So,
yeah.
but I think so.
Hmm.
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm just processing something that I know personally about them, which I can't
Them?
say right
Yeah,
now. And yeah, and
exactly.
it's like, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. So one of the ways if they make silly mistakes like that is actually starting to show them appreciation as a person. And it may seem counterintuitive, especially to those of us who are very logical. um, but I will tell you, it will make a huge difference in that person in how they respond, how they react to
Okay.
to what it is that you're wanting them to do. Hmm. Yeah.
Wow. I got homework.
You got homework. I've given you like a whole bunch of homework. So now that
Yeah.
we've spent about 45 minutes kind of chatting through hiring and kind of communicating to your staff, what's kind of one key takeaway?
That I need to spend more time in the onboarding phase
Hmm.
before actually bringing them onto my team, making sure that it's a person that I want to work with,
Yeah.
and not just somebody who can quote unquote do the job. More like, is
Hmm.
this the personality type that would make a fit for me as an entrepreneur? Because if
Yeah.
it's in a huge company setting, of course, there's an HR person who's going to take care of all of that. But in this
Hmm.
setting, you're working with me.
Yeah.
And my style is like, I'm a problem solver. I'm the things that I am. I need somebody who is able to assist in that while also
Hmm.
working on their own goals. So I
Yeah.
need to see that this person has this goals, this like the one to eventually maybe they want to make some money by the side, or maybe
Hmm.
in addition to making some money by the side, they want to also start their own thing down the road. And so this is the
Right.
opportunity for them to learn. And so in working with me, they would see that, hey, I need to know how to problem solve, because if I get to be on my own, I have to solve those problems. I can't wait
Hmm.
on somebody else to come solve those problems. So I need to then align that my goals and my vision for them, my goals for me, my vision for where I'm going, and my vision for what I see this person doing aligns with what they have as a vision for themselves.
Yes. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. So how do you feel at the end of this conversation?
I got a lot of work to do, Nancy.
I'm so sorry.
But I feel relieved, right? It's not like it's telling me I'm not crazy, but it's like, okay, there are different personality types. I need to be aware of that, and I need to factor those in making a decision. And so it's not about them, but it is about them in a way. But yeah, I get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
but no, I appreciate this.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I am so grateful that you were willing to jump on and have this conversation with me and take on this challenge today. This was wonderful. For those of you who are still watching with Impact and Influence, thank you very much. It's lovely to have Ida on here. If you are looking for accounting help in Quebec, then reach out to Ida. I'll put her link in the bio below. And for those of you who would love some help with a difficult employee or hiring and understanding a communication issue, then please click the link below and join me for an Impact and Influence session. I love to give these free sessions away to help people grow winning teams in their corporation through one conversation at a time. Cheers.
Thank you.